Happy New Year, everyone. How's it going? Welcome to the Across the Spoilerverse podcast. So glad you could join us. Hope you're enjoying 2024 already. Be honest in the comments below. How long have you gone yet without being nasty to someone and arguing on Twitter? I'm trying as hard as I can right now to not get into any BS with anyone, but we'll see how it goes. Greg, how's it going with you?
It's going well, Paul. It's great to see you after Christmas. How was your Christmas? How's your family? How's your hot wife? How's everything going?
It's all going pretty good, to be honest. It was nice actually just taking some time out and just being like, you know what, I'm not going to cover every episode of What If. I'm going to just do the ones from 5 onwards and have a bit of a chillax on it. Do they still say chillax, the kids? I don't know,
Yeah, they
but they
do.
will. Speaking of What If, we are getting into that right now. What did you think of season 2?
Paul, you and I have been here many times saying, what is Disney doing? Why are they releasing this at this specific time? Don't they realize they are ruining our holidays, specifically us? I was pleasantly surprised by how enjoyable that What If show was. I thought it was so fun, so much better than season one. And yes, the finale. I see that there's been some discourse with it, and I am. I think I saw some of your video this morning at the time we were recording this. I saw some of your video, and based off of the comments, I was like, okay, yeah, Paul and I have some similar opinions when it comes to criticisms, but I still, even then, I was like, yeah, that's still a really fun finale in spite of some narrative things that occur there. Overall, though, I was pleasantly surprised, man. I liked it so much more than I was expecting to. I just could not believe
Yeah.
how much better it was.
No, I really, as much as we were angry about the release schedule, watching it how it was released, I thought this is a really fun way to enjoy it. And I had said before it all released that I wasn't going to bother covering any of it. But I started watching it and I'm thinking, you know what, I am going to cover this, but I'm going to wait until there's at least some connectivity, and I'm not killing myself or missing out on anything that I wanted to do in order to cover it. So spoke to my friend
100%.
Mo, who got it early. He's seen them all, and he was like, episodes 5, 6, 8, and 9, they're all connected. So I thought, you know what, I'll do those episodes and I'll just lock them in. MT, can you do episode 7? He's done that. So we had a nice little run of it. I did enjoy the season. I did think the finale fell very short though, and it was purely the character twist with Doctor Strange Supreme or whatever he's Strange Supreme, I'll call him. I always think of like a Supreme Pizza from Pizza Hut whenever I say that. But I did think the character turn was a bit out of nowhere. If they had teased it throughout the season, I think that I would have been more on board with it. But every time he was showing up in a post-credit scene, he was like, "How are you doing, guys? What's happening?" And then for it to turn out he was the bad guy, it felt a bit like Daenerys in Game of Thrones, where it's just like really fun and bubbly 1 second, evil the next. And I don't fully understand what the plan was because I'm pretty sure that he could have powered up the forge anyway without having to get Kahori. He could have just got someone else. So the plan was get Kahori for the forge and then have to get Captain Carter because Kahori will know that he's a bad guy and fight him. So it's better to send in her or something. Doesn't make sense to me, that plan. And I was kind of thinking, what is the what if of this finale? You know what I mean? Like, what is the actual what if that's going on here? It just seems like a big fight.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Good from an action point of view, story wise, not too sure on it, but overall, I think the season was fantastic. A great step up of season 1. Die Hard, that Die Hard episode, loved it. And I was just
Yeah.
coming off the back of something that I should hate Die Hard for, guys, because that Die Hard video on the channel right now, it took 3 days after we edited it all to get it online because it just kept getting flagged. And normally, yeah, when you upload a video, you'll get a 7-second claim, and you just have to go back and edit all these parts, try and re-upload it, and what'll happen is you'll keep getting hit with these 7-second claims, and eventually you'll get to a point where all those 7-second claims have been re-edited. Now this was going through the 7-second ones, 5-second, getting it down. It finally got down to 3 seconds, and I just thought I'm going to try 5 more uploads, and if I don't get it on this one, it's been 3 days, 60 attempts at it. After
Right.
I've already paid all the editors to edit the entire thing, I'm just going to leave it. So I was a bit down on that, Greg, but to see that episode, it was so good. And just coming off the back of obviously spending a lot of time with Die Hard, just the little subtle things they did in it, I thought were really good. Even just Darcy stepping out and turning and looking up at Avengers Tower was playing on Al Powell stepping out of the gas station and just looking up at the top of the tower and seeing like the little sparks on top of it. Really
Yeah.
good. I think the Nebula episode about Blade Runner, that was brilliant. Yeah, it's just a solid season. I'm racking my brain. 1602 as well. Love that
Yeah.
graphic novel. Definitely check it out if you guys like that episode. It's by Neil Gaiman, who's a fantastic writer. And yeah, just to see that, I like how every season they kind of take an already established Elseworld story and kind of make that into an episode. Like season one, we had the zombies one, and then this season, 1602.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I think the Nebula one, starting off with that, immediately set the ground of, oh, this is going to be a different season right away. I loved it so much. I was blown away. And I was thinking, okay, is this just going to be, is the first episode going to be the one where they do something really cool? And then after that, it's going to just dip back to what season one was. And they kept just surprising me throughout. And I think through I honestly think the Stephen Strange argument is going to be going on for quite a while because that finale, I'll just say this. I had just the inverse experience of what I've heard with people who really like the Marvels in a way of, yeah, they can, like, there's a people who watch the Marvels and go, I see a lot of the flaws. However, I still had a lot of fun with it. And I wasn't one of those people. I am one of those people when it comes to this what if finale because I thought like visually it's still very impressive. And I see the arguments that I even said it in my video of yes, it does make sense actually that this guy would not get over Stephen Strange as stubborn as he is. Like even though he did have a character arc in season one, as stubborn of an individual as he is, realistically, yeah, he would not get over the death of Christine after that whole obsessive path that he went through. I completely see the argument for that. I believe the validity of it is what I'm saying. I just think narratively throughout the season they didn't really set that up that it was going to come back in some capacity, if that makes sense. And then when you're making the argument for realistic portrayal of grief, like, but you also have like insane, unrealistic things happening the entire time. So you can't really pick and choose your battles of, well, no, that's realistic. But then you got like other things that are like so hyper unrealistic that are happening throughout because then you see different justifications for why, Captain Carter is able to become just insanely powerful throughout. And then, I get it at this. A lot of times I just go, yeah, I get it. It's a half-hour show, so you can't really build up to some of these things. However, man, I keep going back to the age-old excuse for any comic book property shortcoming. It was so much fun. I had such a blast because it's visually beautiful to look at, and that's the thing with Marvels that I couldn't even get on board with. Not to only compare it to that, but that was the thing of why I would say I could walk away saying that finale I had so much fun with, even though I could see some of its shortcomings because it was still dazzling to witness, on my television screen. So yeah, it
Yeah.
was good.
I think they just kind of threw the kitchen sink and the entire house at everything for the finale, and it just
Yeah,
that doesn't necessarily interest me that much. When it's the
yeah.
same with the Secret Invasion finale, it just gets to
Mhm.
a point when you've got every single power, and it just all the powers negate each
Yeah,
other, and it's just kind of just flashing lights on screen rather than being there being stakes or even people
yeah,
out thinking a certain
yeah,
situation. Iron Man 1, great example, will get set up earlier in the film. If you fly too high, the suit gets frosted over, can't handle the ice, that sort of thing. And
yeah,
then it pays off later in the end. The Dark
yeah.
Knight. I know how he got these scars. He's got the little batarang things that come out of his wrist. I like when fights are set up like that, whereas this is just
Course.
kind of every single power doesn't matter what it is. You keep throwing it and
Yeah.
keep shooting each other with the lasers, and that's it. And eventually, one of you will break through. And yeah, I did feel like it fell apart in terms of that.
The thing that I think they're missing with Captain Carter, and I am curious to know what the comments would say about this. The main element that I think they're missing with Captain Carter, and they only just introduced Kahori. I'll use the example. okay, so Captain Carter, the alternate version of Captain America, the whole "I can do this all day" thing. The reason why that quote stands out so much, even though Captain America is super powerful, he's a super powerful guy. He's fast and everything. He's got agility, not like Quicksilver or anything, but you know what I mean. Uh, he usually says that when he's beaten up. He usually says, "I can do this all day" when he is struggling, when he is like on a lifeline. You could tell he's exhausted. That's why we root for Daredevil in that hallway fight, because even though, yeah, he's powerful, he's got heightened senses, whatever, it's because he's like on the verge of death, you know. And even though we know Captain America won't die, it is that physical exhaustion that is all over, like whether he's bloodied up and messed up. But even in the What If season, I don't feel like a lot of that criticism was warranted towards Hela, even though we know she's introduced as a god, so you got that eliminated right away. But what I actually respected about it, this is going to come across a little weird, is that when she's introduced in that show and she gets to Earth, like she's getting her ass kicked. Like there's when she starts in a fight, like just freaking lands in the face, and you see her have to earn her way back up and become a skilled warrior again. And I feel like that's what the missing ingredient is with Peggy Carter in the show, because I think Haley Atwell is an extremely charming actor, and I like Captain Carter, but that is
I
that
cry
thing that
every
keeps
time I
getting
see that Union Jack, Greg. As soon as I see that Union Jack on screen, I just go, "We finally got a hero."
representation. Yeah, no, man. That's the one quality there. Because even Kahori, I thought was I loved her episode, loved the world, and with it being a half-hour show, you don't really get time to demonstrate a lot of the. If you're going to make someone super powerful, you do have to introduce some element of physical struggle along the way, and I think sometimes Marvel does shy away from that with certain female characters, but that's why I was using Hella as a comparison. So I'm like, no, that's what was really cool about her, was watching the struggle that she had. So,
Well,
yeah.
every writer out there in Hollywood knows that Mary Sue is a trope, and
Mhm.
I would put if I was writing something from I might not be the best person to write things from a female perspective, but I would actively try and avoid going into tropes that I already knew. And with that being such a
Of course.
that gets levied in so many videos at the moment, and so many discussions, and I personally would actively avoid it. Captain Carter, I love her. I don't really see that myself, but if people are levying that criticism, I can totally see it from their point of view. And I think the internet in general, we kind of have hit a point where there's very little nuance and very little people willing to agree that there's shades of gray in any issue. It's very much black or white. It's you
Yeah.
are on this side or you're on that side, and we get called it all the time. We'll get called woke, and then we'll get called racist and sexist for doing like saying that we didn't like something, and it's like, guys, come on. You guys shouting woke about everything are just as bad as you guys shouting racist and sexist about everything. These are both totally missing the shades of grey in an argument and seeing the nuance there. It's just very binary for you guys, where it shouldn't be, and that there should be discussions about how things are handled. And it's totally fine to say like you don't think a character was handled as well as it could have been without being labeled the worst person in the world. You know what I mean, Greg? And
Yeah, of course.
I think overall, I do think they dropped the ball a bit on the finale. I feel like they didn't really know where to go with it. Whereas in season one, they had a much stronger finale. But I think the episodes preceding the finale in season two were vastly outweighed what they
Oh, yeah.
gave us in season one. So
Yeah.
overall, strong season. I think this year, if and we were talking about this the other day. If Marvel had have released Guardians of the Galaxy, Loki, and What If, they would have been seen as having a really strong year. And I think even if
Mhm.
they'd released Quantum Mania, it would have been an L. But I think people would have gave them the pass on that and been like, yeah, Marvel have still had quite a good year. But it was Secret Invasion that really annoyed people, and the Marvels has been crazy. Even now, I see people talking about it, which is kind of an opposite to our next topic, which is Aquaman, which hasn't really had the blowback. And there's been blowback that there hasn't been enough blowback about
Go
it, saying
back.
like, you guys
Yeah.
haven't given this. You guys were writing hundreds of articles. Like I've seen people tweeting Variety all the time saying, you
Yeah.
guys are writing hundreds of articles about how the Marvels bomb, but you haven't touched Aquaman once. And I think it's at this point, like, everyone expected Aquaman to bomb. I mean, I don't know how long ago on the podcast we were calling it, but I'm pretty sure every time we've talked about Aquaman, it's been saying the movie's not going to do well. But we did see the writing on the wall with it, so there was no red carpet premiere, which even I can't understand that. I mean, I remember in the strikes, people were like, well, they can't have premieres, they can't have actors out there promoting it, but to
Yeah,
not give the sequel to a $1 billion film a red carpet premiere, I don't even hear of most movies not getting red carpet premieres. I thought that was just a standard thing that you guys all agreed to and
yeah,
came out to do. And yeah, I've said for a while that I think in general, audiences on the whole tend to prefer comic book movies that take themselves seriously. And after this year, I'm even more convinced. So tell you what, Greg, if I hear another comic book movie being described as fun and wacky in the build up to it, I'm gonna bloody kill someone. And it might be you, Greg, because you're the closest person right now. So I'm hoping
uh,
that this shows the studios, we need to go back to taking these things seriously. If you look at all the highest grossing films, like Avengers Endgame takes itself very seriously, Infinity War takes itself very seriously. Even Captain Marvel was kind of criticized for her being quite a dour personality in it. Black Panther takes itself very seriously. The Dark Knight trilogy, all that takes itself very seriously. And weirdly, ever since Guardians of the Galaxy, though that was a big hit, and this is another thing I've repeated on the podcast several times. Guardians of the Galaxy was the best and worst thing that happened to Marvel because it made them think that they could make a film out of any hero, but it also made them think we can make a film out of any hero. And sometimes, that's not always a good thing because these
yeah.
characters aren't popular enough to carry a big film and get money back from it. So yeah, it's been a bit of a weird one. So
Well,
did you ever get around to seeing it?
I no, I've been way too busy. I mean, I
You
covered all
son
of
of a
What If.
bitch.
I was under the impression that I would be here talking about What If with you, and you wouldn't have seen it, and then you would have seen Aquaman, and I wouldn't have seen it. I'm like, oh, cool. We're both taking care of one side of the equation here. That's not the case, obviously. No, I mean, I had to work on the edits for What If and Rebel Moon as well, so it was just I was just way too busy. And you know how like I could watch it, but at this point, I'm like, I might as well just wait for it to come out on, on demand. Just do a video then. I'll do it.
So I think the studios have probably learned a very hard lesson this year about what they need to do in the future and how expensive these things are because when things are all sunshine and rainbows and they're making money and getting audiences in, yeah, sure, greenlight a $250 million film, but when they're not, it's very difficult to
Sure.
justify constantly making these types of films. I mean, Greg, I probably made more this year than Warner Brothers did with 4 DC movies. You know what I mean? The people listening to this, they'll have made more money than Warner Brothers did on DC this year because
Yeah.
apparently they lost $1 billion from doing it. So as long as you guys didn't lose $1 billion, even if you only made £10 or $10 this year, you made more than Warner Brothers. They should have just
Yeah.
took that money, Greg, and just put it on red at the casino. But yeah, like I remember earlier in the year we were talking about Oppenheimer and kind of like, wow, it's $100 million and look how good it is, and it's 3 hours long. And I started thinking, why are superhero movies so expensive to make? And that is obviously the danger, that the risk that comes with them. That there's not much risk when they're making money and hand over fist and everything, and you're just raking it in. But when we have a year like what we've just had, it's crazy that they spend this much money when you can make Oppenheimer for $100 million. But I started thinking about it, and if you've ever watched one of those behind the scenes things that Marvel do, it's you can start to see why it actually costs so much. And a good example, a couple of good examples that I thought of. If you ever saw the behind the scenes for Captain Marvel when she's sat in the jet,
Hmm.
everything, even the visors, CGI. And if you see it without, it's all just a big green screen shot. And for example, in Far From Home, if you ever saw a moment where Nick Fury's just sitting in his chair and he's got the gun that he's shot Ned with, the gun CGI, the wallpapers CGI, and I started realizing Christopher Nolan, what he does, I mean, Oppenheimer takes place on sets and locations, and there's not much. He said there's like no CGI in the movie, right? So they build the set, or they either go to the location where it is, they make the costumes, they film it, that's it. When you're doing everything on green screen, then every single shot in your film becomes a VFX shot. And you have to make every single shot in your film go to an effects company to sort it out. And I just started thinking that is why the budgets are so high, because even if you go back to something like Iron Man, you look at where the way that's shot, the suit CGI, but most of the sets and locations they go to are real places, so they're not spending they don't have to build those places a lot of the time because they're just going to locations and doing it. And when you start filming everything on green screen, it just skyrockets your cost. And I've started thinking about that. And when they talk about how they want to do Blade for $100 million, and people are like, well, how can they easily do that for that much money? It's probably because they're going to shoot on location and just use real costumes. And the vampires will probably just be normal people walking around with like fake vampire fangs in and stuff. But once you start doing like an Aquaman thing where it's all under the sea, you're spending a hell of a lot of money already just off that concept alone.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000%. When you go into this terrain of when you become extremely reliant on VFX in particular, that will extend on cost for reshoots. That'll extend on now the cost for extending on a production in general, and they want this ability to sort of control literally every element in post. When there's people like Nolan, they plan in advance, and it's just kind of funny thinking about how there's this inverse that has sort of occurred in Hollywood, where I feel like growing up when a movie was like just bombastic with CGI and visual effects, that was the conversation of just wow, look at this mesmerizing Hollywood film with all this CGI and every shot is a visual effect shot. Now it's impressive when it's a Nolan film, when it's Oppenheimer. We're like,
Yeah.
there's no visual effect shots in here at all because there has become an over reliance on CGI in particular. So because I think a lot of the time they don't really know what it is they want to do with certain things. Like the production for the first Aquaman was batshit. That was insane, and they had drastically changed the look immensely by the time we actually saw the film. And I haven't seen The Lost Kingdom. I've heard there's some good CGI. Then I've heard there's some really bad CGI in the film as well, which is baffling because you'd think that they would kind of have an Avatar effect where they would one up their game and go, all right, well, the first one was known for being like, look how cool this world is. Now let's even go crazier and look even better. But I've heard a lot of people kind of dog on the CGI for that
It's
film.
okay. Yeah, I'd say it's standard affair for these kind of movies where it's yeah, it's I would say it's better than
Standard.
Quantumania. It doesn't
Yeah,
look like it's shot on a green screen like Quantumania did, where they were just standing and you'd have like something off in
that's
the
good.
background. It's kind of a fluid world. Excuse the pun.
That's better. I mean, I think too that I heard that they set out to have fun, and I feel like what you're talking about with the fun quality of things. If you look at some of these movies that we were just mentioning alone, there's so much fun to be had in them. Guardians 3, I remember there's a lot of laughter that the theater was having with that film. Maybe not in Britain because apparently you guys don't emote, but out here people were having a great time. And in what you call it, Spider-Man into across the Spider-Verse. That's yeah, that one people were having a ball during it. So there is a lot of fun, but there's also a lot of dramatic heft as well. And I think when it came to Guardians, people just kind of took the wrong lessons. It's kind of the same way when Batman Begins came out, and people will take wrong lessons from things. Of let's
Yeah,
not make
Amazing
everything a
Spider-Man
supercar.
was yeah.
Yeah, they're very much influenced, and I think too that's what happens with every like that's how cinematic universes came to be, and they're like, oh, fun, let's make everything jokey. But you're like, no, no, that's not just it. Even the first Guardians movie, which is a lot of fun, knew when to have that emotional weight. It's kind of like with Thor Ragnarok to Love and Thunder. They take the wrong Taika Waititi seem to have taken the wrong lessons from what worked with the last one. And maybe Marvel, I imagine, too, overlooking Love and Thunder, took the wrong lessons of what worked with Ragnarok and went, okay, just magnify this, but let's exclude this other stuff as much. So, yeah, I think in general, they have to re-examine everything.
Well, come take a journey with me through time, Greg, and the listeners. Let's look back at like older movies and think about them. And genuinely, you will see, right? I've just thought about it here. You will see when a serious franchise turns to comedy, it destroys the franchise. Superman, the Richard Donner thing. Yeah, it was light-hearted, but it took itself seriously. Jump to like Superman 3 when it's slapstick, like a 10-minute slapstick scene at the start of the film, and then Superman 4, destroys the
Mhm.
franchise. Batman 89, Greg, starts off really serious. Batman Returns, very serious. Batman Forever, bit serious, but sort of bit jokey. Batman and Robin, bloody hell, went all out, jokes, killed the franchise. And the DCEU's another example of that. That tone that was set in Man of Steel, really serious, took itself serious.
Sure.
And yeah, I know a lot of people don't enjoy that take of Superman. I personally really do. But we've slowly seen over time that it's got more and more wackier, and that's the same thing that's happened with the MCU. If you look at Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, Captain America, Thor. I know I got those release orders wrong. It started off quite serious, but it had jokes in. But now it's getting more and more leaning towards comedy. For example, She-Hulk,
Yeah.
Thor: Love and Thunder, that sort of thing. And it's kind of, yeah, it feels like the wheels start to fall off when they do that. And just thinking about, I can't think of a franchise off the top of my head that started off serious and then it has leaned more towards comedy. That's managed to keep going and it hasn't destroyed itself once it's hit that point. Maybe Deadpool, but that was always a comedy thing. You know what I mean? I think tonal shifts in general might not work within franchises because we fall in love with those first couple of films, and then to see the franchise steer in a different direction, it's kind of, I don't know. And I do kind of feel that's almost why Star Wars has remained so successful because I know people hate on the newer stuff, but tonally it at least feels in line with, the Mandalorian. For example, the Mandalorian season one, I got that on 4K the other day and I rewatched it and I'm thinking, tonally, this is completely in line with what's came before and it works.
Well, Thor, the first one, while there's humor in it, there's jokes to be had. It sold itself, especially in the marketing, as a pretty serious film. And then the Ragnarok became way more comedic, and that was
Yeah,
is
true,
like
true.
that's like one
You're
example
right.
that I could think of. I
Well,
can't really think
thanks
of
for
any others.
dismantling my entire point. Thought I was
No,
really onto something there going back through time.
there's only one, but no, I mean, I think there has the humor of and fun of things just has to come from within the characters. If you look at Zack Snyder's Justice League and then the Whedon cut of Justice League, there's humor in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but it's coming from certain characters, certain moments from Flash, like that whole thing when Superman comes back to life. That was a really funny moment, and when Flash is like looking at running after him and he's like scared, there's actual comedy, there's actual humorous moments there. Or when Flash interacts with Batman in the Batcave. Oh, no, flip that. He interacts with Bruce Wayne in his little Barry Allen cave that he's got going on. So there is humor, and that's coming from Barry Allen, the character himself. But when you look at the Whedon cut, even in the scene where Superman's resurrected, there's more jokes added in here. There's the lasso scene. There's other things that make the movie feel goofy now. There's the scene where there's a lot of like Whedon cut jokes that have not have not gestated well over time. And so I think that's the missing ingredient. It's like people often look at just make it funny, but the funny
Yeah.
has to seem
Make it bright,
natural from
make it
within the
colorful.
characters. Yeah, yeah, it has to like Infinity War has jokes. There's a plenty of jokes in there, but they're coming from within the characters themselves, and
Yeah. The
sometimes they
character's own
just write
jokes.
jokes. That's the problem with it. That's probably the best. That's probably the
Yeah.
most efficient way to put it. Characters are not jokes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do feel. I think that the DCEU was just doomed from the start of the year. Like one of the dumbest things that they did was announcing it was the end when they could have. Like, Greg, I've said this to death as well. I feel like this is just like a
Have you?
clips of this year episode where we just repeat all the points. But every time we've talked about a DCEU movie and it's bombed, we've been like, guys, there was no need to announce that none of these movies mattered until 2024. And they could have happily
Oh
have
yeah.
come out next month and been like, guys, thanks for all your support with the DCEU. We're going in a new direction. And I really hope Gunn sees this and decides, oh, I need to completely cut ties with this thing and just reboot it from the ground up. Because again, and I know you guys always argue with me about this in the comments. I feel like the writing's on the wall at this point where we've had so many bombs and it's just going to pull down Superman Legacy
Oh
if this
god.
is attached to it in any way.
I think Aquaman failing is one of the best things that could have happened for this reboot in the weirdest way. I have my tinfoil hat comes on that they really wanted this one to fail. Because if
Yeah.
imagine if it was a great film, imagine if people loved it, people would be like, "Oh, why are they discontinuing the DCEU?" But when you've had like flop after flop, and then they barely promoted this one. It seems like they really did not want this one to swim above shores. They wanted this one to sink into the depths of the Atlantis Ocean because now that it's shit, people, I think people will be way more receptive now to a reboot. It's just the way things go. If something shitty will go, all right, I'm over for a reboot now.
The Snyder Cut's the perfect example of that. You had a universe that was going in a certain way, and a hell of a lot of fans who were saying, no, it needs to go back to what it was with Zack Snyder's vision. And we need to,
Mm-hmm.
and even like after the Snyder Cut released, Restore the Snyderverse was trending all the time. And now
Mm-hmm.
I think you probably are right, and it's a good thing overall that it's done badly and hasn't been well received. Like I actually quite like the film, Greg. I
Oh,
tweeted it
did you?
out, and the embargo hadn't lifted yet, and it was I realized that
Oh
the
yeah, I saw
embargo was
that.
lifting. Yeah, I've never experienced that before, where I've went to see something the actual day of release, and I went in to tweet my thoughts. I tweeted it, and then I realized, oh, the embargo hasn't even lifted yet. So I quickly deleted the tweet because they won the Warner Brothers after me, Greg. But I said I thought it was okay, and it was one of those moments where I'm sure you've had it before, where you'll either say something's amazing or you'll say it's really bad, and you'll be a voice, like that meme where everyone's sat down and there's the one person standing up. I felt like that at that moment because I was like the only one saying, "Thought it was okay, guys. Didn't think it was horrendous as everyone's saying." Um, but yeah, I mean, what I should have done is write that really positive thing, delete it, and then wait to see what everyone else said, and then change my review to fit in with that.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, that was a bit of a strange day. And obviously there are other factors. Amber Heard had a hell of a lot of headlines the last couple of years. That
yeah.
petition with millions of signatures on. And I sort of saw this film almost like the boys comics, right? That when superheroes, when they're injected with compound V, and they get killed, their brain kind of refries, like reanimates because of the compound V surging through their system, right? Now,
Oh
Vought
cool.
can't be like, oh, we've been injecting people with compound V. So what they do is they have a little farewell tour where they bring that hero out. They're completely brain dead, going like mumbling along, and they say, "Oh, this hero, we're doing a goodbye tour," and just kind of prop them up, and then
Yeah,
say, "Look,
yeah,
they're going off to Mars, and they're going to go live in Mars and fight the aliens over on that side." And that's kind of what this felt like.
yeah.
It was like a farewell tour of the DCEU, but they're off in the George Clooney universe with Ezra Miller's career and Amber Heard and Jason Momoa. They're all over that way, just
God.
enjoying it. And we give you guys the farewell tour. Yeah, and I think you are right. I think had this been good, fans might have been online demanding that universe continue, whereas it's been so killed off that it's dead now. And we'll see what James Gunn does. He's obviously said that Blue Beetle is the first
Mhm.
DCU hero, but so they might try and connect it in with that. I would just say just cut it off, mate. It's like the end of Saw. You want to get you trapped with that handcuff around you. You want to get out of it. just saw it off and get out of there. Just cut it off. And we'd love to take the foot with us. We'd love to, but we can't. It's going bad. Just cut it off and go. Please, just go.
Just go. I agree. Let it go. I think. I mean, Cholo. He's a really charming actor. I like Blue Beetle quite a bit.
Yeah.
There's a
But
way
Greg,
where
sometimes these things
I'm like,
happen.
you just gotta
Sometimes
go. You
these
gotta make.
things happen.
They call it "kill your darlings," "kill your babies" is one of the creative choices they say, and yeah,
Like, I
you
would
gotta let
love
it
for
go.
Ben Affleck to keep coming back as Batman. You know what I mean? I would love for that to
Yeah,
happen. And
he wants it to,
it
obviously.
yeah, Sholo Blue Beetle, I enjoyed it, but unfortunately, it dropped in this weird time period where that was another
It was a
film that
flop
they
too.
could have
Yeah.
easily have delayed for a couple of years. And unfortunately, just please just cut it off and get out
Why
of there.
didn't they just delay it? Well, like that is a very I mean, it might have made some weird headlines of oh, maybe they have a lack of faith in it or something, but I feel like they could if it was really the new DCU character, why put that in between another DCEU? It just makes it it's a mind-boggling choice. You could have just delayed the film. It doesn't affect the Shazam timeline or the Aquaman or the Flash timeline. Just delay it, and then your vision for whatever it is you are placing forward will be clear to your audience. It's kind of
Yeah.
it just
You know what?
seems like
What
common sense to me. It's logical, isn't it?
Yeah, and I know, guys, we're not really having a structured conversation here. We're just kind of going off on other tangents about
It's
DC in general. But I was thinking the other
no.
day, right, about the Snyder Cut, because Rebel Moons came out, obviously, and that's got me itching to go back and rewatch the Snyder Cut. But I was thinking at the end, Wayne T. Carr was meant to be the Green Lantern in that, but Warner Brothers put
Mhm,
in a mandate and said, "Look, we're using Green Lantern in the future, and we
mhm.
don't want people getting confused with it, so you're going to have to cut him out of it." And I was thinking they could have easily have just put him in, and not everything would have been fine because they're resetting the whole thing. But yeah,
It's just so sorry. I know we keep trying to move on, Paul, but that's that's another like at that point, Warner Bros. Should have been like, "Well, you can't use Batman because we got like 3 other Batmen we're using it right now." So it's
yeah,
you're going to confuse our audience if you use Batman in this movie. So yeah, they could have
just
used
dump
Green
in
Lantern.
whoever. Yeah, I mean, you had Darkseid at the end of it. Yeah, just dump in whoever. Just get everyone on board. Who
Yeah,
cares? If you're
who
just dumping
cares?
it anyway, yeah, sure, put Green Lantern in it.
Let it
Get
happen.
whoever you want. Yeah, that takes us over to Rebel Moon, which the viewership, it's difficult to report on this stuff because there's so many voices on Twitter right now that are saying one thing, and the next people will say a completely different thing. So Rebel Moon, this is from what's on Netflix, and if you guys want to correct me, that's totally fine. But it says Rebel
Sure.
Moon debuts after 4 days with 23.9 million views. In comparison, Murder Mystery 2, that Adam Sandler film, I think, that
Woo!
got 42.9 million. The Mother got 42.9 million, and Leave the World Behind got 41.7 million. That Gal Gadot
Man,
film from earlier in the year, Greg, Heart of Stone, you remember it. Of course,
I
everyone remembers that. That was a
couldn't even
great
recall the
movie.
title,
That
man. Could-
yeah, that got 33.1 million. So yeah, it got pretty much more than 10 million views than Rebel Moon. And yeah, why do you think that is, Greg? What do you think's going on with Rebel Moon? What did you think of it in general?
I thought it was fine. I didn't love it. I really didn't love it. And I'll be honest with you, I think the most disappointing part of it to me is it didn't it didn't get me, unlike Batman v Superman and unlike even the Whedon cut of Justice League, it didn't particularly get me super interested in the director's cut. The only thing that's getting me interested in the director's cut is the way they're pitching it as like this totally different film and vibe and everything. So I'm gonna watch it, like regardless, even if my initial interest right now isn't exactly super high. It's because I didn't give a shit about like any of the characters, and I in the first half hour and the 40 minutes of it, I was I was thinking to myself, it was actually before Sophia Botella left farmland tattooing spot, was that This movie's like, yeah, it's full of tropes and whatever, but I'm enjoying it. It's fine. And then after she left, I was like, I could really use some interesting characters here. And then as it just kept progressing, I found my interest in it going down. It was like so fluctuating between this looks really cool to, but but I keep losing interest in they just show up, recruit someone, and and I just don't really care, and I would kind of forget what the main plot is, even though the plot is so simple. It's the Magnificent Seven plot. It's the Seven Samurai plot. Recruit to save, and yet I feel like the movie would lose sight of its simple premise. And so I
Yeah,
think it was fine, but it was I would definitely wasn't in love with it, and I think the conversation around it didn't help bolster its numbers. It wasn't thought provoking, and if you don't love Zack Snyder, I don't think you're gonna like that. Like, I really don't think this is gonna win over anyone. Whereas, like, Leave the World Behind, as much as some people like seem to totally shit on the ending, like that
yeah,
was
they
such.
hate it.
If you look at the reviews for that movie, like good critic score, the audience score is wow, they're really ripping it apart. But man, it creates a conversation, though. The movie creates a conversation, regardless of what you think. If you think it's pretentious or whatever, it still creates a conversation. Whereas
I
this
got
is
like a
like,
million views making Leave the
dude,
World
you did
Behind
great.
videos just talking about what I thought was in it. And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, everyone was like, I don't know if I like this movie. I don't know what the hell's this is rubbish. What's going on? Yeah.
yeah.
It's kind of
But
that Netflix thing that captures at the moment, almost like Bird Box did, where it's very sort of, yeah, it just captures everyone's interest. They always release it around December time, and it kind of people watch it and it's got good word of mouth basically. And I don't think Rebel Moon had that at all. And it
no,
was obviously it was pitched as a Star Wars script, and it's kind of crazy how similar it is to Star Wars as well. You've got a
no,
character on a farm wanting to go out, meeting rogues and rebels along the way, but it does. I don't think it has that camaraderie amongst them. Like
no.
Suicide Squad is a really crappy movie that's kind of hatcheted together, but they have that scene when they're in the bar and they all kind of bond. And there's not that
Mhm.
one scene in Rebel Moon where they're all kind of just sitting around and telling their stories and bonding and getting to know each other. So I don't get to know the characters, and I don't
That
feel like they're a group.
that's why I'm not super interested because I guess I didn't really get an inkling of chemistry amongst the cast. So when I think about the extended cut, I'm not that interested in it because of that. I'm like, sure, well, it's not really the world that's the problem for me. It is like so much of that movie could have been saved simply by scene work, simply by actors interacting with each other and having like real good chemistry. And like every actor who they cast is a good actor. That's the thing. It's like everyone who's cast is a good actor. It's just like you show up, they give a monologue or someone gives exposition to them. They do something, unless you're Jimon Hansu, who just shows up to give a monologue and he's just on the team. I think that was like when the whole thing with Ray Fisher's character. I don't know. I just didn't give a shit. I just really didn't give a shit. I like Ed Skrein. I thought he was a fun villain. I thought he was a really fun villain. Um, and the part two trailer, I'm gonna give it a shot. But yeah, I wasn't. I, and I think some people I hear a lot of people talk about how they thought the visuals fluctuated. I like the visuals a lot. I think it was actually one of Zack Snyder's best looking films, and maybe that's not a
Yeah.
popular opinion. I really thought the visuals were rock solid. Like, I think a lot of time it's just with Zack Snyder. He's not. Look, I like to love most of his films. Like bottom line, I do. We said it last time, and the only one you haven't seen is the Owl one, and I haven't seen Sucker Punch. And I think though what he usually needs is a good writer. Like he needs a good screenwriter there to help flesh out his vision. Like he at the end of the day, he's a kind of artistic director who comes from aesthetic and mood, and there's nothing wrong with his approach, but that's why he's a director, and you need a good screenwriter to help fill in
Yeah.
all that other stuff. And
Well,
then
he's
again,
even known as being a visionary. It's from like
director.
visionary director Zack
Mhm.
Snyder. Whenever his name's presented in a trailer or something, it's always kind of with that. And I
Yeah, yeah.
do, Snyder, I really do like his work, and I know I get shit on for that. But I think for me, it's always his extended cuts that I really think those are the good ones, like Watchmen, um, obviously the Snyder Cut, even Batman v Superman. It's the extended cut, and hearing that one's coming, I do feel like, oh well, this has a chance of rectifying all my problems that I have with the film. But yeah, I feel the same as you. I was kind of let down by it. I think even beyond the Star Wars comparisons, I'm not a big Warhammer fan, but I know lots of people are saying it's pretty much just Warhammer. But even things like the guy going to the village at the start, it's very similar to Inglorious Bastards.
It's a very derivative movie.
Yeah, it's very derivative. Like they go to a cantina and they have that scene that Luke and Obi-Wan had with the guy, but
Mhm.
this time it's like a weird guy wanting sex with the Gunner guy, and yeah, it's just kind of it just feels like stuff that you've seen before, and it wasn't as enthralling as I really hoped it would be. So that, and I know the word of mouth hasn't been that good on it. I think that Netflix were kind of banking on a fan movement, which is why they held back the extended cuts. And it at the moment there just hasn't been that yet. And I think they've kind of shot themselves in the foot starting a new universe this way, where it's going to be like we've released the even Zach's out there saying that his extended cut, the better version of the film, that's the one he wanted to make and stuff. And it's just like, why have you done this?
Right.
And movie
If
studios in general, Greg, they're just all over the place. So we're going to jump into the next topic,
yeah,
which is movie studios grading. And it's come from Variety. What they've done is they've taken the highs of low of each studio and graded them this year. And we'll see if we disagree. We'll see if we agree.
I haven't seen any of this yet. This is my first time. You sent me this, so let's see what goes
This
on.
is a reaction, live reaction, exclusive. So Disney, yeah, well, it's been a very bad year for Disney, and the first sentence is, "Oh, how the mighty have fallen."
Mm.
And then they start backpedaling at this point, saying, "Well, relatively speaking, of course, Disney is still a leader in terms of market share." However, they noted that James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water, released at the end of 2022, grossed more in 2023 than most of the studio's would-be blockbusters.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, they've basically brought up a year that we often talk about with Disney, which is 2019, in which I think pretty much all of their movies grossed a billion, and it was a massive thing. And they've started to show the cracks recently. So they've graded them at a C plus, Greg, and they've said
Eesh.
the highs are Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Little Mermaid, and Elemental. The latter of two we slagged off on the podcast, Greg. We were saying that it did badly, but I think Elemental especially had legs and just
Oh,
kept
definitely.
growing and growing. Still haven't seen The Little Mermaid, so I'm not sure about that. But they said the lows were the Marvels, which was obviously a big bomb, and it kind of was bad for just comic book movies in general. I think when the Marvels bombed, it was almost a sign of like, oh crap, is this the end? You know, when a DC movie bombs, it's like, oh yeah, whatever, mate. DC
Mhm.
movies rarely do well. When a Marvel MCU movie bombs, it's like, oh crap, is
It's
that
like
what's
the
happening?
fall of the Roman
And then
Empire.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, that was that they're reporting. So that made 383 million. The Marvels made 204 million, and Wish was a big underperformer with 126 million. So yeah, the Marvels only grossing that is absolutely insane to me. I remember when we were talking about kind of box office predictions. Me and
Yeah.
good friend of the podcast, best friend in the whole world, Greg. If you, we're always having a laugh in that. Me and the guy, Brandon Davis, went on his podcast. Better friend than I with him than I'll ever be with you, you son of a bitch. But yeah, we were both saying we think the Marvels will do 500 million, and Greg, we were getting absolutely slated in the comments. And for it to do even worse than that, to do half of that, pretty much, it's very bad. It's very bad. Even my lowest
Outrage.
expectations, Greg, if it had have made my lowest expectations, I probably would have been happy. But man, this is crazy.
That's what happens
So
when
how are
you
you feeling
show
about
all.
Disney this year, Greg?
How do I feel about Disney? This is not even including
Yeah.
Disney Plus shit. It's just movies, right? This is just movies. Oh wow, that is a. I mean, we've talked extensively about so much of this. You know, okay, none of this is really a surprise to me of what we're seeing here. The one that is popping out to me is Wish because Disney. And I know it's not the hot one to talk about. Like we rag on all these other ones or whatever. And yeah, I agree with this rating. Sure, it's is like what growing up, man. Growing up, what did you think about with Disney? You thought about their animated movies. That's what you thought about. Now you hear Disney. I don't even think about animated movies with Disney. I think about this shit right here, like if I don't ever think about like their hand drawn or even their computer animated stuff. Not even really even Pixar. Like there's just the Elemental on those lists. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a Pixar movie they did. And Wish was supposed to be touted as like their 100 years or whatever, and
Yeah, return to form.
that is the most disheartening aspect of this is how much it's lost sight of what has made Disney so special. Like, have they had other live action things along the way? Even in the journey of growing up on Disney and loving them and being known for their animated stuff, yeah, absolutely. But that's what made them the most special. And again, Wish is another one I haven't seen. I think, yeah, this list of highs and lows, Wish is the only one I haven't seen. And to me, that is the saddest one of them all. It's the lowest grossing one, but to me, it's the most disheartening one because, like Indiana Jones wasn't always Disney.
That really hurts me, Greg. I
Which
really
one?
wanted a good Indiana Jones
Oh
movie,
yeah, no, it's
and when I
fun.
heard, James Mangold doing it, I, Harrison Ford was like crying in interviews and stuff, and saying like he was so happy to be
Great.
back, and then to just see
Yeah.
him at the end of the movie, kind of blubbing away, and then get punched and knocked out by a girl and taken back
And
home. It's kind of like, wow, you really could have had the guy go out in a blaze of glory on top, showing everyone, and you've reduced him to like a pathetic man who's just been knocked out and taken home for
it's
and put to bed.
it's the
So
most
yeah, very
disappointing
strange.
out of all the ones on the list. Yeah, I would say Indiana Jones is the most disappointing one. I haven't seen Wish, but uh I was surprised because I like the first like half
Just
hour
the
Indiana
legacy Indiana Jones carries as well. I mean, that's what
Jones.
was the most disappointing for me.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think out of all the sequels, this is obviously going to be have the longest legacy to it because the franchise is so vast. Whereas, like, I don't think there's another movie on this list that it's the first movie was like that long ago. You know what I mean? So they gave it a C plus. I'm not scoring it a C plus. I would be like a D, just for how you well, maybe even lower, maybe an E, because I've just remembered about how they handled the strike, and pretty much all the conversation around Disney is how bad they're doing. And
Quantumania is not on here?
yeah, I mean, Quantum Mania did okay. I wouldn't say it was a high. I wouldn't say it was a low either. I
Mm,
think it did okay.
okay.
I mean,
I
it didn't gross as much as Ant-Man and the Wasp, I don't think, but it was still I think it just made a profit, and I might be wrong on that and might have lost money, but it wasn't like a colossal loss, you know what I mean? It wasn't one of the biggest box office bombs of all time, for example, like the Marvels or Indiana Jones is. So I was gonna say a D, but for how they handled the strike and just Bob Iger talking shit, I'm gonna drop it. I'm gonna drop it down to an F actually for Bob Iger, and
mm,
that's because right, if that guy had just left when he left and he quit, he would have been known as the greatest CEO of all time. He would have been like, wow, Bob Iger, he was when he was running Disney, they were just getting home run, $1 billion every single film, home run. And Bob Chapek, I think Bob Chapek probably did better than what the run that Bob Iger 2.0's had. And I think, if Chapek had kept running it, we would have just been like, this never would have happened under Bob Iger. He was the best. He's the greatest. So I'm dropping it down to an F just for the strikes, how many movies have bombed, and bloody Bob Iger just constant ruining his legacy. You ruined it. You could have been the greatest CEO of all time, Bob, and you ruined it.
I agree, man. I agree. What's the
You
next on
going
the
with an F
list?
as well?
I would go, for a letter, for Disney. I mean, I guess I'll meet you at a D. D for
Okay.
Disney. We'll go D for Disney.
Okay.
That's the way to do it because yeah, I think I think they're if we're looking at it just from like the financial side, like I guess Variety know better than me. if we're looking at it from just like a pure optics side, from how like the conversation and emotional association with Disney is going, I would probably put that lower than a D. Like they have really gone downhill in terms of that. Like you can have you can have a year where you're like, I've had some low performing videos, but once you have tarnished a lot of the reputation though, and that's a complete, like I'm looking at, I quickly like did a quick skim of some of these other movies, and I'm like, oh yeah, these other studios are not. I mean, Warner Brothers is a conversation to be had, but it's not the same as Disney, you know. Um,
Yeah, I would
like
say Warner Brothers and Disney, those two have kind of, their CEOs especially,
yeah,
have kind of ruined the reputation of those
like
studios. Whereas like Paramount, I don't hear people talking shit about the CEO of
exactly.
Paramount. You know what I mean?
Even though they've had a couple of like dingers, but yeah, no, like the Warner Brothers and Disney have a face, they have a villain associated with it, you know.
Yeah,
Whereas the other ones, I'm like, I don't know who runs these other studios. Actually, I'm not familiar, you know. But those two,
yeah.
yeah,
You guys just enjoy being billionaires and keeping yourselves to yourselves. Very smart. So that takes us into
yeah.
Paramount. Their highs are Scream 6, Paw Patrol, Teenage Mutant, I don't know why I said Teenage Mighty.
Teenage
Teenage
Mike.
Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, and Killers of the Flower Moon. Their lows, Greg, and I'm annoyed at these lows. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1
It's
and
terrible.
Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
They're two
Bloody
terrible
hell, mate.
movies.
Dungeons that they were both like
They're
Mission
both
Impossible.
awful
You didn't
films.
like that, but
They're both
I thought it
awful.
was good.
No, they're just
You
terrible
didn't like
films.
Dungeons and Dragons?
My God, they're both terrible films. Just joking, man. No,
Yeah, I swear to God,
Dungeons and
Greg.
Dragons, especially though, is a great film. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, just
how's that a low? I
I
would put that above all the ones in the highs, and
it
it
did
made
not
more
have a
money
good
than all of
trailer.
those ones as well. So
Okay,
yeah, Dungeons and Dragons right made 208 million. Scream 6 made 169. Paw Patrol 197. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 180, and Killers of the Flower Moon 156. So the lows, Dungeons and Dragons, made more money than all those, and it was a bloody good movie as well. Why is that in the low section? Variety? What the? This is classic clickbait marketing, rage bait. You drive me to share this article everywhere because I'm so angry. So they gave them a B minus. I feel like that I would go a B. I
did
think
Killers of the
Paramount
Flower
have had a
Moon
pretty good
cost
year.
more to make than Dungeons and
Yeah,
Dragons? Am I wrong about that?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I think it
weird.
did. But I mean, I don't know how much they sold it to Apple for. They probably
Oh,
made
that's
a crap load out of that.
right. It's an Apple
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Um,
And obviously they would have agreed with how much money Apple were going to pay them before they released it. So yeah, I think Paramount's had a pretty strong year. I there's not a movie out of them. I haven't seen Paw Patrol, but there's not a movie there that I don't think is good. Good to great.
you haven't
The
seen
box
Paw
office
Patrol?
returns aren't amazing, but yeah, solid yeah by them. I'm gonna go with a B.
I don't know, man. I think I would go with a B minus. I think I would stick with it because Dead Reckoning Part One, especially, is a big dent. Like after Top Gun Maverick being a billion dollar hit, I know different franchises, different. At the end of the day, it's like you're gonna get more of an audience for Top Gun Maverick because of that nostalgia. And but the last Mission Impossible movie was a huge film, and then we know all the factors of all the things of why Dead Reckoning Part One was affected at the box office. But it is a dip. It is a big hit. I think honestly, like Dead Reckoning Part, and they wanted Dungeons and Dragons to kind of soar them into I don't know like a Pirates of the Caribbean franchise or something like that. They wanted it to sort of go into that direction. So
Well,
I think
it's only the first movie, to be fair. I think it will. I think it'll be like an Into the Spider Verse situation where people
so.
weren't necessarily into it when it first released, and then it gets good word of mouth. People enjoy it, and if they made a sequel, I'd be there day one. I
Oh
think a
yeah,
lot of people who missed out the first time, I think they'll show up for it. I think you're starting off a new franchise. Don't expect every single film to be $1 billion kickstart. You know what I mean? And that
100.
takes us into Sony. Sony have actually not had a bad year. So, like Sony are normally the people who show up, go to play football with you, trip over the ball, smack themselves in the face, get a concussion, and have to go home. But Sony, yeah, they've had a much better year than Disney have. So the highs were Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, brilliant film, one of the best films of the year. Equalizer 3, yeah, another another good one.
Hell yeah.
Napoleon, haven't seen it. The lows, Dumb Money, and 65. And I will agree with that 65, especially when I heard Adam Driver crash landing on Earth 65 million years ago and fighting dinosaurs with guns. I was thinking Turok. I was thinking this is going to be the best movie ever. I
Right.
was thinking this is going to gross billions because Jurassic World movies, they're absolutely terrible
Man.
and they make $1 billion. I think dinosaurs is just a way to print money, and this proved me wrong. So, yeah, bad, bad that was. But yeah, Across the Spider Verse, I think probably the best comic book movie of the year, I would say.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. I'm starting to understand this list because it's a little confused. You got to like read some of it a little bit, right? Because I'm like, wait a minute, why is Napoleon a high when I thought this budget was $200 million? But
This
okay, they
box
only
office,
acted as
yeah,
distributor for
didn't
hire.
cost 690 million to make Across the Spider Verse, Greg.
I know, but I'm saying that like, why would Napoleon be considered a high when I'm like, it didn't make it barely broke even, right? Like, hasn't even broken even, but it's a success because Apple financed it, and they were only the distributor for hire. So they made, and that's kind of, I think that's what Killers of the Flower Moon situation was. So they're able to make a good chunk of change off of that. So it's like, is Apple going to make money off of it? But no, that makes sense, man. Yeah, I think B. I think it could go low. I think it'd be like a B plus for freaking Sony.
I was gonna go B
Yeah,
plus,
yeah. Like, this is a great year for them, man. This is a great year because
and they had the
also like
PlayStation as well.
they have their PlayStation, yes, but they have they have these two movies like Equalizer 3 and Across the Spider Verse were also well received films. Like for me, I know we're only looking at box office and financial gain stuff on this. I am factoring in reputation. We'll see how things go when they release like Madam Web and Craven the Hunter and Venom 3 all in one year. But they got
Yeah.
they're releasing all that this year, aren't they? Oh my god. They're gonna drop all that shit.
Well, I'm
No,
gonna give it a
Sony.
B plus, but I might edge it to an A just because they released that Spider-Man game this year as well. So I
That's
enjoyed
true.
that. But we're sticking with movies. I'm not doing technical. I know I did CEOs to drag down Disney, but we'll
Yeah.
just keep it with movies from now on. But if I was scoring it on the studio releasing
Mhm.
Spider-Man PlayStation 5 Part 2, whatever, I would
Yeah.
give it an A, but it's getting a B plus. But Universal, right? Much as I hate them, much as they block my videos all the time and are a nightmare to deal with,
Yeah,
they've
yeah.
had probably the best year out of all these guys. So the highs were the Super Mario Brothers movie, which did 1.36 billion, Oppenheimer, which did 951 million. I feel like it's going to cross the billion mark because they're re-releasing it. I think it probably will edge it. I think there'll be that. They're like the cinephiles. Nolan's got the cinephiles in the palm of his little hand, and they'll show up. I'll probably buy tickets just to try and push it over that. And they had Five Nights at Freddy's, which did really well, and Megan, which did really well. Lows, right? They've got Fast X in the lows, but I didn't even realize this. Fast X made 704 million.
Yeah.
Like that's quite a lot, especially with the way this year has been. I think a lot of movies this year would have been very, very happy to make 704 million.
But it cost
And
like
then
$2
Book
billion
Club,
dollars to put together, man. It was an expensive movie.
true, true. Book Club, not heard of that. Apparently, that was a low. Renfield,
The
no,
hell's
Renfield
book
was all right. What are you talking about?
the hell's book club?
And
Heard
and
of
Last Voyage of the Demeter, yeah, that was pretty disappointing to be honest. I was very excited for that movie. Dracula on a boat, basically an alien remake with Dracula, and I was thinking this is gonna bang. But yeah, not a good film.
Yeah.
But overall, I agree with that Universal score. I would say an A.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
two,
yeah.
yeah, two of the biggest movies of the year, the Super Mario Brothers and Oppenheimer, and they also pulled Nolan out from under Warner Brothers as well and got him working for them. So much as I
Uh,
hate Universal,
I would
much as you make my life a nightmare, you've done all right. What are your
I
thoughts
mean,
on Universal, Greg?
I think I'd edge it a tiny bit close. Like it's what if there was a letter grade between A to A plus, I would go there because they had just a phenomenal year. I forgot Megan was the kickoff of this year. These are phenomenons. These are movies. These four movies at the top. They are massive films. Like all pierced the zeitgeist. You know what I mean? Like they were all conversations. Even like Super Mario Brothers was just the legs on that film. Five Nights at Freddy's too. To have a day and date release with Peacock, where you could watch this shit on the streaming service, and it still was a massive hit. It's not to mention the profit that they made off these movies, you know, because I forget that like Universal and Blumhouse are the same. Yeah, I would give them a
And
little bit
bar,
of a higher grade.
bar Oppenheimer, those movies are gonna have strong sequels as well. I feel they're all in
Mhm.
production at the moment. Super Mario Brothers 2 is obviously gonna come. Megan 2's gonna come. We're definitely
Yeah,
gonna get Megan 3 with the 3 and the E, which they already kind of did. But Five Nights at Freddy's as well. That's already in production. So yeah, they've had a really strong year. Got legs going into the future. Probably going to have another strong year once those things release. They'll do another movie with Nolan, I'm guessing, and that'll be a big hit as well. I've given it an A. Greg, I'm going to pull it down to a Z because of all the copyright strikes that they send me. They get
oh
nothing.
yeah,
They get
no, they're
nothing from me.
the biggest
That
assholes, dude.
I'm the teacher in the class, and the Universal stuck a whoopee cushion on my seat, and it had a pin in it, and I know it was them, and I don't care what they put out. I don't care what they answer the test. It's a Z. It's the lowest you can get, Universal, you scumbags.
They are such
Um,
an anxiety for in my heart. They really are.
they'll literally like block some of my videos months after they've been released, and I'm like, I don't even know if I should dispute this because I've already made probably all the money that I'm going to make, but I just don't like having that strike on the channel, and I know they're
Right.
going to lift it eventually. But when they reject the dispute, and then you've got to go through the next thing, and it's like, just makes it
It's
doesn't
like
make the job
we
fun, guys. And
we
it's
know how this
for
goes.
movies. It's just talking about movies. So yeah, Warner Brothers is the next studio. They've been given a B plus, right?
You
I
know what?
don't feel like
I
I
gotta
think
say
tanking
something.
the DCEU is kind of automatically you get a D for that.
Uh, I guess it averages out from, you know, the like, okay, if the DCU tanking brings it to an F, but then, you know, Barbie, it just, like, helps take that ship out of the water, acting as an Aquaman, if you will, taking it out of the water, then
Yeah,
I I would put it maybe at, like, a B, perhaps?
fuck off.
You know, because come on, man. I mean, Wonka's doing great, and Meg 2 made 300. That's got to be like international. Holy crap, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's there's no way.
So the highs.
It's,
We'll talk about the article. So the highs for Warner Brothers are Barbie with 1.44 billion.
yeah, yeah.
Obviously, very good. The Nun 2, did it do well? 268
Man,
million. I
cheap,
suppose those horror movies cost nothing to make.
yeah, cheap to
Meg
make.
2's a high. And Wonka, yeah, Wonka's doing well. 280 million to date. Lowe's, The
Damn.
Flash, jeez. Blue Beetle, obviously didn't do well. Shazam 2, forgot it had released. Burned that on my head. I bought the 4K Steelbook for that for like 35 quid to just have it in my collection. Still
Mm.
ain't bloody watched it. It's just sat on the shelf. No, rarely do that. I'll just buy it, put it on. That's still on the shelf there since its release. And obviously Aquaman and the Lost. They've even put Aquaman and the Lost City here. It's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom variety. You don't even care that much. I think
No fucking
I think
way.
before when we were talking about all the headlines that the Marvels gets that are like really bad, the fact that we don't even have those
I didn't even
headlines for
notice
Aquaman
that.
shows how little people care. Like no one even cares enough to dunk on it. It's kind of like just kicking something when they're down.
I didn't even
So
notice
they've
that.
got a B. They've got a B plus according to Variety. I disagree. I would. I think the way they pretty much tanked the comic book movie industry with just releasing bad performing films.
Mm.
Obviously they not lost Nolan as well. Zaslav, Jesus, I don't know what the hell he's been doing. You had all the controversy with him canceling Batgirl. I would say I'm giving them an E, Greg.
I just think Warner
Suppose
Brothers.
they had The Last of Us.
Yeah.
We'll push it up because they had The Last of Us.
Well, we can't. You keep giving it other things that aren't on this list. The I think it's
I'm just
maybe
like a teacher. I just like my students.
they, it seems like they would have like a flop hit, flop hit, flop hit. So I think like a B or a C plus is more fair than a B
But do you
plus.
not think the amount of money they lost on those? I mean, those superhero Aquaman
Sure.
1 made $1 billion, Greg. Do you see? How do you mishandle it that badly to the point you don't even have a red carpet premiere? No one goes to see it. That is
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. I have
That is
no.
like, did you in high school in America? Do you guys have like before your final exams? Is the year before kind of like you have a sort of fake exam at the end of it? That's kind of getting you prepared for that. Because in England, when I was a lad, I realized the other day it's been 20 years since I took my final exams at school, so I'm getting quite old.
Damn.
But what?
Damn.
So we have like year 10 and year 11. Year 11's where you get like your final exams. Year 10's sort of like you're doing mocks and stuff. You're building up to it. They got a billion. They got all top marks in the year 10. Year 11, they showed up to the exams. They dropped the ball on everything. They fucked it. And I'm marking them down, Greg. I liked them. They had potential. There was a time I was out there every day going, I love DC movies. I love them so much. And now it's like, I love Matt Reeves and Todd Phillips DC movies, and everything else is kind of fine. But if they ended it, I'd be absolutely fine with it.
Damn. They really lost all their DC movies. Were flops. That's kind of just hitting me right now. It's like I knew it,
Yeah.
but I didn't really feel it until right now.
Every film was a bomb.
Damn, every single one of them. And it just
How can
kind
you
of
give
got
them a
worse.
B? Because of Barbie.
Yeah, man. I mean, Barbie is the
That was a
biggest movie of the year. You got to give it
true.
points, man. Barbie's the biggest movie of the year. And it's also got like
I know, but if a
nominations.
student scores the lowest marks on every single exam except one, are you like, oh well,
This is a big mark,
they're
man.
passing?
It's a great extra credit point to me, man. Like it's Barbie, and none too. It costs like 30 million to make, I'm assuming, and Wonka's doing great.
Yeah, but no one cares about Nun 2. That was just something teenagers probably went out to see that weekend because there was nothing else out, and it's like, oh, I just want to have a jump scare. I just want to watch a movie that's nothing but
I,
jump scares
I don't think.
90 minutes. Don't care what it is, just put it on.
I'm not gonna concede. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna settle at a B. I'm a B for Barbie. I'll give you a C plus. I'm gonna give it a C plus. That's where I'm
Right,
gonna
and
get.
the next point is Apple, which I don't get how this is in here because it says highs and lows, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Napoleon. How can Napoleon be in Paramount and Apple? You know what I mean? How can it be a high
What the
in
shit?
Paramount, but it's a low in Apple? I think they basically cut. I think they work together on that for the financing of it, but they're getting a B as well. I'm gonna score them. I'm gonna score them a B. Right? I'm
Mm,
gonna give Apple a B. I'll tell you why, Greg. I feel a bit bad for them because they do
yeah,
make good shows and they do make good films, but no one really watches them. Soon as that 3 month trial that you get when you buy a new iPhone ends, and it's like you get 3 months of Apple TV. Soon as that
yeah.
trial ends, no one goes back to Apple.
Yeah, yeah, I'm there. I'm part of the problem. I don't watch. The only Apple show I've seen is Monarch, and that's because I have to cover it. I don't.
Yeah,
I haven't seen Ted Lasso.
too late to quit now.
I don't even know about the. Is it these are the only movies they've made other movies, right? But is it the only
I
theatrically
don't know.
released ones they've made?
Yeah, I think that's what they're counting. Yeah,
Hmm, that's too
they're
bad.
saying cinemas were basically serving as expensive billboards for Apple TV Plus.
I just
I mean, they
think
got
when
Scorsese and Ridley Scott on board, so I think they cared about the films they were making. And I think I haven't seen Napoleon, but Killers of the Flower Moon was good enough for me to be like, okay. I see what you're doing, Apple.
The biggest problem when you release these movies in the theaters is you're letting the audience know when you're saying it's like if Netflix were to go a Netflix original releasing in theaters, you know it's only going to be in the theaters for like a day, and it's
Yeah.
going to be on your TV in like 72 hours. So just freaking wait for it to come out, right? And so whenever I see these logos for like with a streaming service, it's gonna and then they're playing a trailer in the theaters. I'm like, well, part of me is going, do I really want to come back to the theater to see this? You know, and yeah, because like Netflix will do these limited releases, but they are truly limited. You know, they're generally in areas for cinephiles, generally speaking. Whereas Killers of the Flower Moon is an Apple original, and they're slapping that on in their trailers, and they're releasing that across the globe. You know, so it has a bigger chance of like losing money on these theater performances. So and no one even really watches Apple TV to begin with. So it's interesting seeing on the list. It is interesting. I already saw the
Yeah,
grade
I'm
for the next
surprised
movie, man,
Netflix.
and I don't agree with it. I just don't. I don't agree with it. It should be higher. I'm just saying it right now. Spoilers for the next one.
Yeah, so Lionsgate, Highs, John Wick Chapter 4, 440 million, Hunger Games, I'm not going to read out the whole title, Saw X, and Jesus Revolution, Lowe's, Are You There,
Mm,
God? It's Me, Margaret, Joyride, The Marsh King's Daughter. So Lionsgate get a B+. plus. So yeah, Lionsgate, they've been congratulated by Variety for keeping budgets in check, as both John Wick Chapter 4 and The Hunger Games, they carried reasonable $100 million price tags. So
mm,
yeah, all turn a profit. Haven't seen Hunger Games yet, but it's had legs. Didn't have a crazy first weekend, but it keeps bringing the money in every weekend, and I think it's going to do well. And obviously, it's all because of Rachel Zegler. Because if you blame Rachel Zegler for a movie failing, surely it does well. She has
yeah,
to be the person who made it do well.
right.
So yeah, and you know what? I feel like Lionsgate are one of those studios that are like the little engine that could. I'm kind of rooting for the guys. They're not overblown. They don't come out and call their fans idiots and say they hate them because they didn't like their movie. And I like the way that Lionsgate do business. I think that the IPs they have, they're very grassroots IPs. John Wick is obviously a great example of that. That's redefined action movies in general. I know Hunger Games is based on books, mate, but it did start the whole young adult novelization craze that when there was like the Maze Runner and all those movies were
Divergent.
getting made. That was all off the back of the Hunger Games and stuff. And yeah, I think that yeah, I do like Lionsgate. They've been given a B plus. They're not the first studio that spring to mind when I think of movie studios. Are probably quite low down the list, but I'm gonna agree with the B plus. I'm gonna say, you know what, Lionsgate, I'm your teacher. I've, you haven't exactly been putting your hand up for every question, answering all the time, but
Mm.
you've sat at the back of the class. You've kept your head down. You've got on with the work. You've came out with a respectable year. I'm giving you a B plus. You pull your socks up next year. You'd release something crazy that could easily be an A, Lionsgate. That could easily be an A.
Well, Paul, I'm an A with Lionsgate. I really am. Because look at this, dude. Look at this. John Wick Chapter 4, 440 million. That's an R-rated film. And the word of mouth on it was so good. And I loved it. It's probably like one of my top 3 favorite movies of the year. I haven't made a list yet, but I would say it's up there in like the top 3. And Hunger and I know it's not just about, your personal favorite movies, but I think that's a really great success. Great success. Bringing back Borat, Saw X as well. Like these are movies that are so deep in the franchise, and they're doing great numbers here. Usually a 4 with an action franchise like on this, whatever. They kind of dip after a while. And then Hunger Games, you're not even bringing back the original cast. You have to sell them on a new cast, and the word of mouth on it with audiences is doing so good that it's managed to make this much money. I feel like Lionsgate is at an A with their hits because when I think about these movies that are lows, they're not on the losses. Like, yes, I like Joyride a lot. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a really funny movie. I think it was only like a $20 to $30 million movie. So did it lose money? Absolutely. But the losses, at least from my understanding, are not as grand of a scale as, especially compared to what they have made on the films they've done that continue to make money every time. Like the amount of times I see like Saw X or John Wick 4 um, doing well on Prime Video on the top 10 video on demand rentals, like I'll just see them pop up there. They continue to still make money. And sure, if we're looking at just box office where it capped off at, I still think it's really great numbers, personally, for what they were made for and what they had to sell their audiences on as well. Maybe Hunger Games could have been a little bigger, actually. Is it still out in theaters?
I think it is, yeah. I think
Yeah.
it is. I think it's winding down, but it's still done pretty well. Yeah, I think Lionsgate for me, that they're at a B level. I think just they don't quite have that star power to take them to that next A level. You know what I mean? It's not like a Warner Brothers or Disney level studio that in my mind when I think about them being like that level. And I know those we've been slagging off those two studios, but when I think of movie studios, those are the ones, then Universal and Paramount, and then I think if they just hit it to that next level, took it to that next tier where they're in with the big guys properly, I'd give them an A, Greg. I've been nice here, but I think there's some stuff they can improve on. I think once you get that A, Greg, you're kind of at the top, you're at the pinnacle. You haven't had that billion this year, you know what I mean, Greg? So I ain't giving you that A. I'm
Why
giving you
doesn't
the
it,
B plus, and
why doesn't it be a
you
billion?
better bloody be thankful.
Doesn't need to be $1 billion. Why is it A24 on here? Is there something I'm missing of
Yeah,
why? I
I don't know. Where
feel
the
like
hell's A24? Well, A24 get an A every year. I don't care what happens. I'm just like, yeah, you may talk to me this year. Boom, yeah, instant A, instant A.
didn't Lionsgate do Expendables? That would bring it down to a B plus for me,
Yeah,
actually.
sorry guys, you had the B plus,
Yeah, and
so you're
Lionsgate
back down.
they produced Okay, yeah, I just looked it up. Yeah, they're distributors for Expendables. Yeah, okay, never mind.
Sus guys.
Never mind. I take back everything I said. That is really,
Yeah.
really bad. That- oh boy. Oh man, they did the
Now
Now You
those,
See Me movies. Dude, those are great. Can't wait for Now You See Me 3.
yeah, they're weird because they just seem to get loads of views. I know you reacted to them, and it's like
I
I don't
I
really
had other
know
people do it
anyone who
because I
really
loved
talks
them.
about them, but
I
yeah,
loved them, and I said, "You guys watch this now." Yeah, they're great. They're fun. They're
I
so.
just don't like CGI magic.
And
I'm
that's
gonna watch them though, but
you
it's
gotta
just yeah.
watch. It is unsafe. It is utterly ridiculous. If whatever you just gotta take away all your love for the prestige, and that's all. That's the only advice I could give you is just take away your love for the prestige and just watch a star-studded cast do CGI magic and go. The whole time you just be shaking your head, but you can't stop watching, and it is an unbelievably engaging film.
It's like the Fast X movies, Greg. Fast and Furious movies. They're all CGI in the cars and stuff, and it's just kind of once I've seen like real car chases, you know what I mean? It's difficult for me to
It's the same
really,
thing.
really love that stuff.
You just gotta forget about it. You just gotta forget about good movies. You gotta forget about well made
Okay.
cinema, man, and just turn your brain. It's the literal definition of like look at famous people doing CGI stuff. It's a great time. It's a great time.
Well, look, though Paramount had a great year, they got a pretty good score
Yeah, yeah.
with Scream 6. Scream 7's been an absolute mess. And Christopher Landon has exited. And he said, "This will disappoint and delight others. It was my dream job that turned into a nightmare, and my heart did break for everyone involved. Everyone. But it's time to move on. I have nothing."
Oh,
So
dude, of
people are saying
course.
that Scream 7 is pretty much dead. And they've came out and said, look, we're just going to do a complete reboot. I was thinking, Greg, right? And I'm a genius, right?
I
I'm
know
not
you are.
really. I'm a bit of an idiot, so apologies
Well,
in advance, guys. But
I'm a douche.
in the Scream universes, right?
Uh-huh.
What do they have? They have those stab movies
Sure,
that are
sure.
like fourth wall breaking meta commentary.
Hmm.
I was thinking if I was put in this situation at Skydancer, I'm like, what the hell do I do?
Right,
I
right.
would just make the stab movies, put this drama in the script of the stab movies, and just constantly take shots at how stupid everyone at Skydance is, and
Right.
it would be like the Matrix for whatever the hell that was called. Was it? They've all got
Resurrection.
Matrix. What was the Matrix for?
Resurrection.
Resurrect.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking between that and Revolution, and I couldn't quite remember. And Rebooted as well. I think it should have been called the Matrix Rebooted,
I
but
think
we'll
it would have been way
leave that
better.
at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a complete mess behind the scenes. And yeah, they've got to a point now with Scream where,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Melissa Barrera ended up getting fired. Neve Campbell didn't get paid what she wanted and what I think she deserved as well. They lost General Ortega, and now yeah, Christopher Landon's gone. It's kind of like, congratulations, guys! Well done on fucking this up. Amazingly, you've somehow managed to. You had a real hit on your hand. The Scream franchise was back. You guys were just printing money. You've just fucked it up. So it's pretty much dead. I think they're obviously not gonna take that as a lesson though, and what they're gonna do is try and bring it back. But I think it's pretty doomed.
I wouldn't want the job. Who would want this job right now? I think
Yeah,
you gotta wait.
I
You
mean,
gotta wait some time, man. I'm a huge fan of this franchise. It's my favorite horror movie franchise. You gotta wait. The way how there was time and distance between Scream 4 to Scream 5, you gotta give it the distance now. I think it's inevitable that we will continue this franchise. I don't think it'll be with Melissa Barrera's character. I don't think you can recast them. It's not something Scream franchise should do is recast anyone, in my opinion. I don't think they've ever done it. I don't think they ever should. And for something like this, you got to have a complete. You can't just go like, well, come up with something, you know, bring someone back. I don't blame this director for leaving, and I think he's the one who did Happy Death. Is that where I recognize his name from? Christopher Landon. I think he did the Happy Death Day movies. They probably had a really specific vision for this film that has just been shot to shit now, and there's too much of this negative press around it as well. You can't win, you know. You just can't win. You can't have
yeah, you've got the
that
fans
sample
against you. No matter what they
yeah,
post, it's
no matter
like
what they
just
do.
shut down instantly.
And then people returning seem like they're in support. Then it creates a political conversation. Like it just creates a whole mess of things. This just continue if they just do this now. So you have to give it some. You got to give it a few years. I do think you got to give it some time. And studios are not known to be like, yeah, you know what, we'll give it a few years. But that's really the only choice you're left with because what if you do this? I think just you're going to get a flop on your hands. Like, yeah, you get your movie made, but you're just going to get so much backlash. And I think a big part of horror movie franchises is the community around it. Like you could say with any fandom, sure. Like generally speaking, there is a fervor behind a horror movie fandom that I think is very integral to what gives these horror movies legs. Like these movies are not made for a lot of money and they rely on their audience. We were just talking about Lionsgate. It made like Saw X made $109 million, and it's like that's fucking 10 movies in to this horror movie franchise. And like even I didn't see Insidious mentioned here, but that did all right, and it's because of the again, it's like fans when it comes to the franchise, and I feel like people would probably opt to not show up for this one in some type of solidarity against something they believe in. You know, I'm not saying it's specifically the political side; it could just be for the actors or whatever. But I don't think it would behoove them to make this movie right now, at least.
Yeah, and just looking at what Skydance own, Mission Impossible, Top Gun Maverick,
Mm,
Terminator Genesis. I mean, Terminator Genesis and Terminator Dark Fate is, not exactly that good. But I mean, yeah, just make a Top Gun sequel and put your money into that, guys. Put your money into that. And
right, right.
they did all the Star Trek reboots. The more recent ones they've kind of flattened out now, but they have got IPs that they can easily just take the money that they were putting into Scream and take a
Totally.
couple of years off and put it into that. I mean, and we saw something similar with Halloween where Jamie Lee Curtis was killed off and then came back, and then they had a couple of years distance
Yeah.
in between, and they've brought her back a couple of times. I think, yeah, just take a couple of years off, maybe try and negotiate things with Melissa Barrera down the line, or Neve Campbell or Jenna Ortega, and just try and get them back involved in some way. And don't rush out with another film. I think it's just going to cause bigger issues down the line. So,
Yeah. Just wait for the Israel-Palestine conflict to end, which should be anytime soon, and then then talk with her about it, man. Because goddamn,
Yeah.
the situation's fucking gnarly. I
mean, executives don't stay at places forever either. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes people have it. Ray Fisher and Walter Hamada was a great example of where it was like they they were clearly arguing, and Walter Hamada ended up leaving. I'm not saying Ray Fisher's back or anything, but you know, execs leave all the time and go other places. So even if she has problems with certain executives who fired her, you don't know who's going to be there in 5 years, and they
Sure.
might have someone else who can come in and be like, "Look, we're sorry, I've just come onto this job myself recently, and now made it my top priority to try and sort this out with you. I'm really sorry about how my predecessors handle it. We would love to get you back because we want to make money, and we'll do whatever the hell you want. Please just come back, please, please, please come back, please. And if you got Neve Campbell's number as well, please give me it because I need to call her and try and get her back. I'm begging, please.
And
I'm gonna get fired. It's my first day on the job. I want to make it good. I want to look good, please. If I can sort this out, I'm getting a bonus.
Just get everyone.
Sorry?
Stu's going to be back, and David Arquette's going to be back. Everyone's going to be back. Jamie Kennedy's coming back. Everyone's coming back. Actually, I think we would show up for that if they just made some crazy ass movie franchise. I'd be there and be like, all right, screw it. They got me back. They got everyone in this movie. Even if it's shit, I just got to see whatever this disaster is going to be. If they have every single famous person in it. What franchise would you want to see Scream crossover with? Let's play fun fan fiction here. Is there one you would want to see them crossover with?
Westworld.
Wow, what a choice.
Like a Westworld world, that's the Scream movies. Where it's like a killer, it's chasing
that is
you.
creative.
You know how they have
shit.
Samurai World?
Yeah.
They have have like a Scream World.
I don't know if you're joking, but I'm on board. I can't top that at all. That is really creative. Seriously, there's a scenario here. There's a what if world here that I'm really much on board for. That's really creative.
What if? Thanks. Well, that's why I'm number one YouTuber on a Friday night in
Thank you,
Newcastle.
Paul, for that gift.
Thanks.
No, thank you.
So, any final words, Greg?
No, my final words are I'm happy to be back here with you. Thank you guys so much for being supportive of Paul, myself, for those who have welcomed me with open arms. I appreciate it. And I think we're just going to have a fun, loose year on these pods. At the end of the day, you know, I was thinking about it, man. We got a crazy year ahead of us outside of movies. We got a crazy year incoming. And all we can do is our work here, do our job here. And that is just we're talking about movies. And while there can be some serious stuff that happens behind the scenes and whatnot, it's not, at the end of the day, it is movies and shows. So I just want to like have fun whenever we're filming, whenever we're talking about stuff. I just want to have a good time because right now, real world's gonna get intense out there, and I want to make sure that when people come here, they just know we're just shooting the shit, we're just having fun, talking about escapism.
Yeah, I know people keep ragging on us for being negative, Greg. I've got a feeling that 2024 isn't going to be much better in terms of box office, and I've seen the lineup. We will be back next week to talk about the lineup of movies coming over the 2024.
We're gonna do it.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, cool. We'll go through all our predictions for the year, because we didn't get to do that last year because we hadn't invented the podcast yet, Greg. We hadn't actually invented podcasts back then.
And now
we're going to be back next week to talk about all the upcoming films. I don't think 2024 is going to be big, but I think 2025 is going to be big. I think 2024 is going to be big on TV with House of the Dragon, The Boys Season 4, Echo. Maybe we can talk about that next week. But yeah, there's
shit,
to talk
Echo
about.
Next week. Damn it.
Yeah.
I need a new Echo. Oh man. Just I wanted to have just a super light January. I got sick before Christmas because like so I gotta get these videos done, and then yeah, I just wanted. Oh, dang it, Echo, gotta cover Echo. I'm complaining about the
Yeah.
most first world problem in the world. I gotta cover a television
Yeah.
show. Oh yeah.
We are very lucky, guys, and we thank you for letting us do this job. It's great having you guys involved as well. We're sorry that we missed it. You know, Christmas got in the way. We did want to do an episode, but unfortunately, stuff got in the way. But yeah, we're happy to be back in 2024 and greeting you guys, and we hope you ride along with us. You better be back next week and for every week for the next year.
Yeah,
Because it'll
man.
be trouble if you're not. So yeah, thanks for joining us. You guys take care.